The Bristol Baptist Academy here, and I'm not going to read all this, rather just to highlight a few aspects of this place. Now the picture there on page 1 that you have is the building that was built in 1812. So as you remember from the dates of Samuel Pierce's life, he would not have lived and went to school when it was in this situation right there. We will return back to that picture, though, in a little bit to give you an idea of how the building itself was used. So I want to highlight just a few aspects of what was ministry training, what was Bible college like for Samuel Pierce, Bible college in the late 1700s. So the second paragraph says this: Bristol Baptist Academy was unique in the 18th century in that it admitted only those intended for a career in the Baptist ministry. All right, so it was very much a specialized purpose for this academy. You know, academy, we would consider this of those of college age. Look at the paragraph that begins right beneath the picture. Initially, and this would have been the case when Samuel Pierce was at the school, initially, students lived with the tutors or teachers in their homes. Now, how about that? What do you think about that? Live with Mr. Amos. Live with Mr. Schreiber. Live with Mr. Olson. And live with Pastor Dameron. They lived with the tutors in their homes at 1 and 2 North Street. A purpose-built college, next sentence here is what you see above, opened in 1812, but it retained the original family concept by incorporating the principal's house into the design. So here's what this looked like. The lecture room, the library, and the museum, which we'll look at in a minute, what was in that, were on the ground floor. So if you look at the ground floor, that would be there. Studies, study rooms, and bedrooms were on the 2 floors above that. And they actually used this building until 1919. So the bottom floor there, lecture room, library, museum. Top floor, or the top 2 floors, were studies and the bedrooms. Not sure where the dining hall's at there. Didn't mention that. The ministers, here the next paragraph, another interesting thing I think. The ministers at Broadmead Baptist Church, Bristol, from 1720 to 1825 were the principals and tutors of the college. So, the ministers or the preachers, the pastors at Broadmead Baptist were the teachers and the instructors of the Bristol Baptist Academy here. So, very much tightly connected with a particular Baptist church. Some names here. You can enjoy the history of maybe looking up some of the names of those that were involved with that. Over there to page 2 now. At the second paragraph that begins with in 1770, I'd like to look at the beginning with the last word of the third line, a sentence there. The constituency served by the Academy is best seen in the printed annual reports of the Society. These reports always begin with an apologetic for Baptist ministerial education. In other words, a defense for why Baptist preachers should be educated in Baptist institutions. So they start with that. Followed by the Society's minutes for the past year, listing, here's what was important to the Academy: the churches from which the students came and the churches in which the students eventually got out and served in. So the churches that sent students to the Academy, as well as the churches that their graduates were in. That was important to the school here. Next paragraph, second sentence. The exact number of students is difficult to arrive at, although nearly 800 can be identified as having been trained between, now look at those years, between 1720 and 1860. 800. That's 140 years. 800 were trained there. Here's the enrollment stats. 4 in the 1720s, 16 in the 1730s, 29 1740s, 24 in the 1750s. The yearly average around Ryland's time would be around Samuel Pierce, Andrew Fuller, William Carey, was 20. So Samuel Pierce, when we say he went off to Bible college, he went off to a place where he not only lived with his teachers, but he was surrounded by about 20 fellow students. Well, they didn't do much, did they? 20 students, I mean, what's the, Well, when the newly built academy opened in 1812, the picture that you see on the front there could accommodate 30. But they never reached 30, or rarely. Why? Number one, look at this. From 1800 to 1850, Baptist numbers did not significantly increase. 2, the development of what? What's the next thing there? Liberal scholarship. Renewed suspicion among Baptists of an educated ministry. Baptists started saying, well, we don't want to train liberals, so we don't want to educate intellects that accept liberalism. We don't want that, so Baptists kind of were wary of this. And then other Baptist colleges opened. The rest of page 2 and the top of page 3 deal with how the college was funded. So we'll skip that. A couple last things there. So page 3, the third page there, the first full paragraph. The aim of this society was to supply destitute congregations with a succession of able and evangelical preachers. Able, they were trained, they were taught, and evangelical. They love souls. That's the purposes. Since an unconverted ministry, whether learned or unlearned, is the bane of religion, appropriate students should be recommended. In other words, you're not going to come here if you don't know if you're saved and if you're not living an appropriate Christian life. They had to be recommended by a Baptist church. Look at the next paragraph. The academy, the college here, gave all students knowledge of Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. And they talk about some specific professors here. The third line there says, one of the students says, his studies included English, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and French, as well as rhetoric, logic, history, and geography. In 1745, the student noted that he studied parts of the Old Testament. He read through the whole New Testament 3 times, studied Christian doctrine, Baptist, catechism, and confession. Next sentence, this included English grammar, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, so that all ministers could examine the scriptures in original language. Logic would assist them in their reasoning powers. Oratory would enable them to use the language to the fullest. And geography, astronomy, natural philosophy would enlarge and elevate their conceptions of the great Creator God. And other things are mentioned there as well. Look at the next paragraph. In 1813, it was said that the object of the society is not to make men ministers, but to make young ministers better scholars or better preachers, able and evangelistic. So their goal wasn't to try to get people to become ministers, but to train these young men who were going to serve God and to equip them. And other very interesting paragraph there as well. Look at the last paragraph on page 3, the library. The library grew through gifts. Initially, the library belonged to the Broadmead Baptist Church, which in 1722 had 198 volumes. the formation of the Education Society here led to a countrywide fundraising by Caleb Evans. So 3 large libraries were donated. And in 1795, they printed a catalog of all the books, and it listed Andrew Gifford in 1784 giving 3,500 divinity volumes, manuscripts, scientific apparatus, paintings, coins, and maps. So, by the year, soon after Samuel Pierce got out, but before he passed away, 1795, 3,500 books were given. Then Thomas Llewellyn, a former student, gave his classical library in 1784, 1790. Another man donated 300 volumes. And then the museum. We talked about the museum. The Bristol College Museum originated with the Gifford Collection, with special interest in manuscripts, books, and printed Bibles. They received this in 1784. There were 13 manuscripts, and among the printed books were 4 Caxtons. Does that name ring a bell to anybody? Caxton. Okay, it did not to me either, so I looked it up. This is William Caxton, born 1422, died 1491. He is believed to be the first English person to work as a printer and the first to introduce the printing press in England in 1476. So to have 4 Caxtons meant that they had 4 copies printed by the very first English printer ever. These books would be dated back to the mid-1400s. Well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Quite valuable, I would guess. At that time, these books were over 300 years old. Look what else they had. The English printed Bibles included Tyndale's New Testament, 1525. Imagine the excitement that those young men would have when they saw the actual work of William Tyndale. And the Pentateuch, 1530. Many other first editions of Bibles. Exciting. Look at the next paragraph. Among many distinguished alumni, and I wrote in my sheet here, Samuel Pierce, because his name doesn't show up in this. Among many distinguished alumni, we have the first comprehensive Baptist hymn book, published by John Ash and Caleb Evans. Maybe somebody can go on a treasure hunt and find one of those. And other notable alumni and some things that they did. Next paragraph, Bristol was the only Baptist denominational college until 1806. But what did some of their alumni do? Look at line 4 there. Other former students played a prominent part in Baptist education in Britain and the world. For instance, Micah Thomas, principal of the Baptist College in Wales. In the United States, Morgan Edwards, founder of the Baptist College at Rhode Island, later to be known as Brown University, the first Baptist college in America. William Stoughton, president of Columbian College. Have we read about that in American Crimson Red yet? We will. Columbian College. Isaac McCoy wanted to get some of his converts into there. They were rejected. Later to become George Washington University. In Canada, Charles Spurgeon was principal of Fredericton College, New Brunswick. In the West Indies, Joshua Timpson, president of Calabar College. Last paragraph here. Third line down, last word. The Bristol tradition has retained its loyalty to evangelical theology. But, and I would circle that word, but what? But what? Its determination to provide intellectually able ministers has involved it in what? What does that say? Wrestling with biblical criticism and the post-Darwinian scientific scene. as well as providing ministers the ability to meet the challenge of 2 world wars, social gospel, biblical criticism, Darwinian science. Certainly lost its way from the days of Samuel Pierce, would you say? So there we have Samuel Pierce and the college that he attended.